It was a rainy evening in the heart of the city. The sky looked dull, and the roads were shining with reflections of streetlights dancing on the wet ground. Cars moved slowly through the traffic, honking every few seconds, while people hurried with umbrellas trying not to get drenched. In the middle of it all, a yellow taxi stopped near a crowded bus stop, and inside sat a man named Ravi, a taxi driver who had spent half his life behind that steering wheel. Ravi had been driving since early morning. His back hurt and his eyes were tired, but he still smiled whenever someone stepped into his cab. He didn't earn much, but he always told himself that every person who sat in his taxi carried a story. Some talked, some stayed quiet, but each of them added a small chapter to his long, ordinary life. As he waited near the bus stop, he noticed a woman standing in the rain. She didn't seem like she was waiting for a bus. She looked lost, holding an old photograph close to her chest as if it was the most precious thing she had. Her hair was wet and her face showed sadness more than anything else. Ravi rolled down his window and called out gently, asking if she needed a ride. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded and stepped inside. Her clothes were slightly damp and she sat quietly in the back seat, still holding that photograph. Ravi started the engine and asked, "Where do you want to go, madam?" She softly replied with an address, barely audible over the sound of rain hitting the windshield. Her voice trembled a little, not from cold, but from something heavier. Ravi didn't ask any more questions at first. He could sense she didn't want to talk, but after a few minutes of silence, he glanced in the mirror and saw tears in her eyes. Something in him couldn't stay quiet. "Are you okay, madam?" he asked in a kind tone. "You look worried." She looked up, surprised that he noticed. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she sighed and said, "I'm just trying to find someone." Ravi nodded, not wanting to push. "Someone close?" he asked softly. She stared out the window and said, "My brother. He disappeared 20 years ago. I've been looking for him ever since." Her words hung heavy in the air. Ravi didn't know what to say. He had met many passengers with sad stories. People running away, people chasing dreams, people searching for hope. But something about this woman's voice touched him. It wasn't just sadness. It was love and loss all mixed together. She continued, speaking as if she just needed someone to listen. "We were very close when we were kids. Our parents died when we were young, and we only had each other. But one day he left home after an argument. He was only 16. I tried to find him, but I never could. Every year I visit the same places we used to go, hoping I'll get lucky. Today I went to the old temple where we last saw each other. But nothing." Ravi listened quietly. The sound of rain filled the silence between her sentences. He wanted to say something comforting, but words felt too small for such pain. He simply said, "Sometimes life brings people back when we least expect it." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I'm starting to think it's too late." They reached a traffic signal and Ravi turned slightly to look at her. Her eyes were fixed on the photograph. "Is that your brother in the picture?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Yes, this is the only photo I have left. It was taken outside the temple a few days before he left." Ravi looked at the photo briefly. A young boy, smiling shyly, standing beside a temple with a banyan tree in the background. The photo was old, its edges worn out, but the boy's face was clear. Something about it seemed familiar to Ravi, though he couldn't place it. Maybe it was the temple. Maybe it was the innocence in that smile. The signal turned green and he started driving again. The woman leaned back, lost in her thoughts. For the rest of the ride, they didn't talk much. The only sounds were the rain and the soft hum of the engine. When they reached her destination, she searched her purse for money and then froze. "Oh no," she whispered. I forgot my wallet at home." "I'm so sorry," Ravi waved his hand. "It's okay, madam." "Don't worry about it." "No, please," she said quickly. "I can give you my address. I'll send it tomorrow." But Ravi smiled and shook his head. "No need for that. You already have enough on your mind. Think of it as a small favor. Maybe you'll bless me in return." She looked at him surprised. Not many people showed kindness like that anymore. Her eyes softened and she said, "Thank you. I'll never forget this." She paused, then added, "I promise I'll pay you back somehow." Ravi chuckled lightly. "Just find your brother someday. That'll be enough." She smiled again, this time with genuine warmth. "I hope I do," she said, stepping out into the rain. As she walked away, Ravi noticed something on the back seat, the photograph she had been holding so tightly. She must have dropped it in her hurry. He called out from the window, but she had already disappeared into the crowded street. The rain was heavy and her figure soon vanished into the blur of umbrellas and headlights. Ravi picked up the photograph. For a few seconds, he just stared at it. The boy's face, that temple, the background, it all felt strangely familiar. He turned the photo over and noticed something scribbled faintly in pencil, a date and a few words. Last day at the temple. He thought about the woman's story and her eyes filled with hope and sadness. He couldn't help but feel something inside him stir. He kept the photograph on the dashboard, telling himself he would find a way to return it. The night grew darker and the rain refused to stop. The streets were almost empty now, but Ravi continued to drive, picking up a few passengers here and there. Yet his mind kept drifting back to that photograph and the woman's story. When his shift finally ended, he parked his taxi near his small apartment. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. He took the photograph in his hand again, turning it toward the light. The temple in the background was one he had seen before. He was sure of it now. It looked like the old temple in his childhood village, about 2 hours away from the city. He hadn't been there in years, but that big banyan tree beside the temple was unforgettable. He sat quietly for a while, thinking. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Or maybe it wasn't. Either way, something in his heart told him he couldn't just ignore it. He placed the photo carefully in his shirt pocket and went to bed. Though sleep didn't come easily that night, the next morning, as the city woke up to a fresh day, Ravi stood by his taxi with a strange feeling of purpose. He had no idea what he was going to find, but he knew he had to follow this small clue. Before starting his daily rides, he decided to take a different route, toward his old village. He packed some water, a few snacks, and kept the photo beside him. As he drove out of the city, the roads became quieter. Green fields started replacing tall buildings. Memories of his childhood returned. The sound of temple bells, children playing in the fields, and the scent of wet soil after rain. He smiled faintly, remembering simpler times. After a long drive, he finally reached the small village. The temple still stood there, though older now, its walls slightly faded. The big banyan tree was still by its side, just as it was in the photo. He parked the taxi nearby and stepped out. The wind was cool and the air smelled of incense and earth. He walked slowly toward the temple steps, feeling an odd mix of nostalgia and curiosity. He showed the photograph to a flower vendor sitting near the gate, an old man with kind eyes. "Uncle," Ravi said politely, "do you remember this place in the photo? It looks like this temple, doesn't it?" The old man took the photo, adjusted his glasses, and looked closely. Then his eyes widened. Yes, this is our temple," he said. "But this boy, he looks familiar. Wait." He thought for a moment, tapping his chin. "He used to come here often when he was young. If I'm not wrong, he works at the repair shop near the market now." Ravi's heart skipped a beat. "You're sure?" he asked quickly. The old man nodded. "Yes, I've seen him many times. His name is Rohan, I think." Ravi felt a chill run through him. The woman hadn't mentioned her brother's name, but somehow he knew. This had to be him. The universe couldn't possibly make such coincidences without reason. He thanked the old man, took the directions, and hurried toward the market, holding the photograph close to his chest. He didn't know what he would find there, but deep inside he could feel something big was about to happen. He couldn't explain it, but he knew that somehow his small act of kindness the night before was leading him toward something extraordinary, something that might just change someone's life forever. And as he drove through the narrow village roads, with the photograph resting safely beside him, the sun finally broke through the clouds, casting a golden light on everything ahead, as if the universe itself was guiding him toward a miracle. Ravi drove through the narrow lanes of the village, his heart beating faster than usual. The streets were quiet, lined with small houses, and a few children played near the roadside. Birds chirped in the banyan tree and the temple bells echoed softly in the background. Everything felt familiar yet new. He hadn't been back here in many years, but something about this place made him feel connected again. He followed the directions the old flower vendor had given him. The market wasn't far, just a 10-minute drive from the temple. Small shops stood side by side. Some sold vegetables, some sold tools, and others displayed piles of spare parts. He parked his taxi near a bicycle repair stall and looked around. The air was filled with the sound of hammering metal and people bargaining for small repairs. As he stood there, holding the photograph in his hand, his eyes caught sight of a man at the far end of the lane, working on a motorcycle. He was in his mid-30s, his clothes covered in grease, his hair messy, but his expression calm and focused. Ravi watched him for a while and his chest tightened. The man's face, it looked just like the boy in the photograph, and only older. He hesitated for a moment. How could he be sure? What if he was wrong? But something deep inside him urged him to try. So he slowly walked toward the man, his steps heavy with both hope and fear. "Brother," Ravi said softly, standing beside him. The man looked up, wiping his hands with a rag. "Yes," Ravi smiled nervously. "I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to ask something." He took out the photograph and held it out. "Do you recognize this picture?" The man frowned slightly, taking the photograph into his hands. He stared at it for a few seconds and then his face changed. His eyes widened and his lips trembled. He touched the photo gently as if afraid it might disappear. Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice shaky. Ravi felt a lump in his throat. "A woman gave it to me. Well, actually, she left it in my taxi by mistake. She said she was looking for her brother, the boy in this photo." The man's eyes filled with tears instantly. His hands began to shake. "That's me," he whispered. "That's me in the picture." Ravi's heart pounded harder. "Then she's been looking for you," he said softly. "She hasn't stopped searching for 20 years. The man sat down slowly on the stool beside him, covering his face with his hands. For a long moment he didn't speak. Ravi could hear him breathing heavily, trying to hold back emotions that had been buried for years. "I thought she would have forgotten me," the man finally said. "I left home when I was 16. I was angry, foolish. We had a fight and I said things I never meant. When I tried to go back, it was too late. Our house was sold and no one knew where she went. I searched for her, but I had no money, no contacts. Life just went on." Ravi sat beside him quietly. The man continued, his voice breaking. "I missed her every single day. She was the only family I had. Every year on her birthday, I go to that temple to pray for her, to hope she's safe. I never thought I'd see this photo again. I never thought anyone would find me." Ravi placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "She hasn't forgotten you," he said softly. "She still carries this photo everywhere she goes. Yesterday, when she sat in my taxi, she was crying, saying she just wanted to see you once before she died." The man looked up suddenly, panic flashing across his face. "What, is she sick?" Ravi nodded gently. "She didn't say much, but she looked weak. Her hands were shaking. I could tell she wasn't well." Without saying another word, the man stood up quickly and grabbed his old bag from the corner. "I need to go to her," he said firmly. "I have to find her." Ravi smiled. "Then let's go. I'll take you." The man hesitated for a moment, looking down at his clothes covered in grease. "But I don't even know where she is now." Ravi thought for a moment. "She gave me her address when she got in the taxi. I remember it. It's in the city." The man stared at him, disbelief and hope mixing in his eyes. "You'll really take me there?" Ravi nodded. "Of course. Let's not waste time." The man locked his small shop and quickly washed his hands. He didn't even stop to eat or change his clothes. The emotions were too strong to wait for anything. Ravi started the taxi and they began their journey back to the city. The road back felt longer this time, maybe because of the silence inside the car. The man sat beside him, staring out the window, lost in memories. Once in a while, Ravi would glance at him and see tears rolling down his cheeks. "Do you want to tell me what happened back then?" Ravi asked gently, hoping it might help him ease the burden a little. The man nodded slowly. "We were just kids. After our parents died, my sister did everything she could to take care of me. She worked, cooked, even stopped studying so I could go to school. But one day I got angry because I wanted to leave the city and find a better life. She tried to stop me. We argued. I said I hated her. That was the last thing I ever said before walking out." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I was too proud to go back. I slept on train platforms, did small jobs, learned how to fix engines. I always told myself I'd go home one day, but years passed and I didn't know where to go anymore. I thought maybe she got married, maybe she moved somewhere far. But deep down I always wished she'd still think of me." Ravi listened silently. He knew what guilt sounded like. It was heavy, like a stone that stayed in your heart no matter how far you went. After hours of driving, the taxi entered the city. Traffic was thick again, horns blaring everywhere. The man's eyes searched every face they passed, as if expecting to see his sister at any moment. Finally, Ravi slowed down near the address he remembered, a small apartment building with peeling paint and an old wooden gate. "This is it," Ravi said softly. The man's hands were trembling. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Ravi replied. "This is where I dropped her off." The man stepped out of the taxi, clutching the photograph tightly. He walked up to the gate, his heart pounding so loud it felt like it might burst. He knocked once, then again, and waited. After a long moment, the door opened. Not fully, just slightly. A neighbor peeked out. "Yes? Who are you looking for?" "I'm looking for a woman who lives here," the man said, his voice unsteady. "She was here yesterday." The neighbor thought for a second, then said, "Oh, you mean the lady with the scarf? She left early this morning." She looked upset. Said she was going to the temple again. The man turned to Ravi, confusion in his eyes. "Temple? Which temple?" Ravi's heart sank. "Maybe the same one. The old temple where you used to meet." Without wasting a second, they got back into the taxi and turned around. The sun was already setting, and the golden light made the wet road shimmer. Ravi drove faster, every minute feeling like an hour. The man sat in silence, gripping the photo, whispering small prayers under his breath. When they reached the temple again, the place was quiet. Only a few people were there, lighting lamps. The air smelled of incense and jasmine. Ravi parked the taxi and they both got out, scanning the area. And then, near the banyan tree, they saw her. The woman stood with folded hands facing the idol, tears rolling down her cheeks. She was praying silently, her shoulders shaking. The man froze, unable to move. His lips trembled as he whispered, "It's her." Ravi placed a gentle hand on his back. "Go to her," he said softly. The man walked slowly, each step heavy with 20 years of distance. The woman sensed someone behind her and turned around. When her eyes met his, the world seemed to stop. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then she dropped the flowers in her hand and gasped, her mouth open in disbelief. "Is it really you?" she whispered, tears already streaming down. The man nodded, his voice breaking. "It's me. I'm sorry I took so long." She ran forward and threw her arms around him. They both cried, holding each other tightly, not caring about the people watching. Ravi stood at a distance, watching the scene with wet eyes. He had seen many passengers come and go, but never something like this. It was more than a reunion. It was a miracle born out of kindness, a small act that led to a moment they both had dreamed of for decades. As the evening lights of the temple flickered, Ravi looked up at the sky. The rain had stopped. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly at peace. He quietly stepped back toward his taxi, leaving the brother and sister to their moment. Sometimes, he thought, the universe doesn't need grand gestures to change lives, just a little kindness and a willing heart to listen. The moment felt endless. The brother and sister held each other near the old temple, tears streaming freely down their faces. Their cries were not just for sorrow, but for relief. For years of longing finally washing away in a single embrace. Ravi stood a few steps away, leaning against his taxi, silently watching. His heart felt light, even though he had no idea how this small act of kindness would ripple through their lives. The sister, her face wet with tears, finally pulled back slightly, resting her forehead against her brother's shoulder. "I thought I'd never see you again," she whispered, her voice trembling. 20 years. I never stopped hoping, but I was losing faith. Her brother held her tightly. "I was angry, foolish, and scared," he said, voice breaking. "I left when I was 16 and I thought I was doing the right thing. But every day, every moment, I regretted it. I wished I could turn back time." They sat on the stone steps under the banyan tree, still holding each other. Ravi quietly approached, not wanting to interrupt, but feeling the warmth of the moment. He handed the photograph back to the sister. She took it gently, her fingers trembling. "I kept this for 20 years, she said softly. "I never thought I'd get it back." Her brother looked at it too, the corners worn, edges frayed. "I can't believe someone held on to it for so long," he said. "And that it brought me to you." Ravi smiled, brushing his hands together. "Sometimes life works in mysterious ways," he said softly. "A small thing can change everything." The sister looked at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. You brought me back to him," she said. I can never thank you enough. Ravi waved his hand, trying to downplay it. You don't have to. Just seeing you two together is enough for me. For a while, no one spoke. The wind rustled through the banyan tree leaves, and the soft glow of the temple lamps reflected on the wet stones. Birds chirped as if celebrating the reunion. It was quiet, peaceful, and full of life, and as if the world itself was smiling at them. Finally, the brother spoke again. I can't believe I missed all these years with you, he said. Do you remember the games we used to play in this temple courtyard? The mango tree near the back wall? She laughed softly through her tears. I remember everything. Even the small things. The festivals, the little temple fairs. I remember saving coins to buy sweets for you. He smiled, a mixture of joy and regret. I remember you always taking care of me even when I acted stubborn and foolish. I've carried that memory with me every day. The sister shook her head, still holding his hand. And I carried you in my heart. I prayed every day, hoping you were safe, hoping one day we'd meet again. Ravi watched as they shared memories, laughed quietly, and cried some more. The pain of separation didn't vanish instantly, but it softened, replaced by the warmth of reunion. He felt a quiet satisfaction. This was more than a taxi ride, more than a photograph returned. It was a bridge between two hearts that had been apart for too long. After a while, the sister finally stood up. She turned to Ravi, her eyes glistening. Would you come with us to the house? She asked softly. I want him to see my home, and I want to thank you properly. Ravi hesitated for a moment. He had work waiting, and his taxi needed cleaning and repairs. But he could see how much it mattered to them. Of course, he said with a warm smile. The three of them walked toward the sister's apartment. On the way, the brother shared stories of his years away, the struggles he faced, the small jobs he did, the lessons he learned. He spoke of loneliness, of wishing he had someone to guide him, of how the world felt big and cruel when he was alone. The sister listened quietly, holding his hand, sometimes squeezing it, sometimes wiping tears from her eyes. You went through so much, she said softly, but you're here now. That's all that matters. Ravi glanced at the two of them, realizing how strong human connection could be. He had spent years driving people from one place to another, seeing their happiness, their sadness, their anger, and their fear. But moments like this reminded him why he loved his job, because sometimes a small choice, a simple act of kindness, could change lives in ways no one expected. When they finally reached the apartment building, the sister unlocked the door and led them inside. The small home was modest, with faded walls and a few pictures hanging here and there. But it was warm and filled with memories. The brother looked around slowly, taking it all in. This was your home all this time? He asked quietly, amazed. She nodded. Yes, I stayed here after our parents passed away. I couldn't leave. It was all I had left. He moved closer, looking around, then hugged her again. I missed so much, he said softly. I can't believe I let all those years pass. They sat together, talking for hours. Ravi watched from the corner, feeling a quiet pride in his heart. It wasn't just the reunion that mattered. It was seeing them reconnect, listening to the stories they had missed sharing, witnessing the laughter and tears mixing in a way that only true human connection could create. Eventually, the sister prepared some tea for all of them. They sat around the small wooden table, sipping the warm drink in silence at first, letting the comfort of being together sink in. The brother smiled, finally feeling the relief of being home after so many years. You know, he said after a while, I always thought life would be empty without you, but now I feel complete. It's strange how one photograph, one small chance could bring me back to you. The sister reached out, holding his hand across the table. It wasn't just the photograph. Someone helped us meet. Someone who didn't know us but chose to care. She turned to Ravi. It was you. You didn't just drive me home that night. You gave me hope. You gave us a chance. Ravi shook his head gently, smiling. I just did what anyone should do, he said softly. But seeing you together, that's more than enough for me. The brother looked at him with gratitude in his eyes. No, you have no idea how much this means. You've changed our lives with a simple act of kindness. 20 years of pain, gone in one evening because you chose to help. Ravi felt warmth in his chest. It wasn't money or fame or recognition, and it was this. Helping someone find what they lost. Helping two hearts reconnect after decades of separation. That was the reward. The night grew deeper and the apartment felt cozy, filled with the glow of lamps and the soft sound of rain against the window. The sister and brother continued sharing stories from their childhood, the small joys and pains they remembered, the moments that had shaped them. Ravi listened quietly, sometimes smiling, sometimes wiping a tear from his eye. Later, as the rain stopped and the streets outside became quiet, the sister and brother decided to go for a short walk. They held hands, talking softly, laughing at old memories and planning for the future. Ravi followed at a small distance, giving them privacy but making sure they were safe. As they walked, the brother said, "I can't believe it took 20 years for this to happen. But I know now some things are meant to be. Some reunions happen only when the universe decides it's time." The sister nodded, "And some kindness changes everything." "Without him," she said, pointing toward Ravi, "I don't know if I would have found you, or if we'd be together now." Ravi smiled quietly. "Sometimes all it takes is a small decision," he said softly. "A choice to care, a choice to act. That's all." They continued walking, the night air fresh and cool. The city lights reflected in puddles on the road, and the streets smelled of wet earth and jasmine. The brother and sister held each other close, feeling safe, whole, and finally together after so many years. Ravi walked a little behind, feeling a deep sense of peace. That night, when he finally returned to his taxi, he didn't feel tired. He felt fulfilled. He had gone out to help one person, and he had witnessed a miracle. A simple act of kindness had brought two hearts back together, healed old wounds, and reminded him why he believed in the goodness of people. He sat in the taxi for a while, looking at the empty streets. Sometimes he thought, the world moves so fast that people forget to care. But then one small choice, one moment of compassion, can change everything. That night he felt grateful to be alive, grateful to witness the power of human connection, and grateful to be reminded that hope could survive even decades of separation. And as he drove home under the calm, starlit sky, Ravi knew that this story, this reunion, this miracle, would stay with him forever. It wasn't just theirs. It was his too, a reminder that in a world full of noise and chaos, kindness still mattered, and miracles still happened. The morning after the reunion, the city felt different. The streets were busier than usual, but for Ravi it didn't matter. He sat in his taxi for a few moments, sipping chai from a small paper cup, thinking about the events of the night before. Watching the sister and brother reconnect had touched him deeply. Their joy, their relief, and the years of longing finally washed away. It had left a mark on his heart that he knew would stay forever. Ravi decided to clean his taxi before starting his daily work. As he wiped down the dashboard and vacuumed the seats, his eyes fell on the photograph he had carefully kept from the previous night. It was still there, lying gently on the passenger seat. He smiled faintly. The photograph had been the key that led to a miracle. He picked it up and looked at it closely. The boy's face in the picture, the old temple in the background, and thought about how small things could change so much. He placed it carefully in his jacket pocket, ready to continue his day. Yet a thought lingered in his mind. The brother had told stories of his years away, how he had struggled, how he had worked odd jobs, and how he had survived alone. It made Ravi wonder, how many people in the world were living without hope, separated from their loved ones and longing for someone to care? That thought stayed with him as he drove through the busy streets of the city, picking up passengers, hearing their stories, offering a smile, a word, a small gesture of kindness whenever he could. Later that afternoon, as he waited near a crowded street for a fare, Ravi saw a small girl sitting alone on the pavement looking lost. She held a doll tightly, tears streaking her face. Without hesitation, he rolled down his window and asked if she needed help. She nodded, saying she had lost her mother in the crowd. Ravi guided her gently to his taxi, speaking softly to calm her. He waited with her until her mother appeared, frantic with worry, running toward them. The mother hugged her daughter tightly, thanking Ravi over and over. As he drove away, Ravi realized that small acts of kindness didn't need to be big to be meaningful. Sometimes they were just about listening, being patient, noticing someone who was hurting, and sometimes those small moments could lead to miracles, like the one he had witnessed just the night before. That evening, Ravi found himself thinking about the sister and brother again. He wondered how they were doing, whether they were starting to rebuild their bond and whether their lives would feel different now that they were together. He hoped they were happy, He hoped the years of waiting and longing had finally turned into something beautiful. The next day, Ravi received a call from the sister. Her voice was soft but filled with emotion. "Ravi, can you come to our home? There's something important I want to show you," she said. Ravi felt a spark of curiosity. "Of course," he replied. "I'll be there in a few minutes." When he arrived, he saw the sister and brother waiting outside their apartment. They looked happier, calmer, and more at peace than he had ever seen. The sister held out her hands, a small package wrapped in brown paper. "This is for you," she said softly. "A little thank you for everything you did. But it's more than that. It's a reminder that kindness matters." Ravi hesitated, not used to receiving gifts. "You don't have to do this," he said. She smiled. "I know. But I want you to have it." Ravi opened the package carefully. Inside was a small handmade notebook, its cover decorated with drawings of trees, temples, and smiling faces. On the first page there was a message, "For the man whose heart guided us home. Thank you for giving us a miracle." Ravi felt a lump in his throat. He turned to the sister, trying to smile, but his eyes betrayed him. I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Don't say anything," she replied gently. "Just keep helping people. That's enough." He nodded, feeling warmth spread through him. The notebook wasn't just a gift. It was a symbol of how one person's actions could ripple through the lives of others, changing them in ways no money or fame could ever match. Over the next few days, Ravi couldn't stop thinking about the reunion and the photograph. Something about the whole experience made him reflect on his own life. He thought about his family, his childhood, and the people he had met over the years in his taxi. He realized that everyone carried stories of pain, hope, regret, and love. And sometimes all it took was someone noticing, someone caring to make a difference. One evening, as he was driving through a quieter part of the city, he noticed an elderly man struggling to carry a heavy bag of groceries. Without thinking, Ravi stopped and got out of his taxi. "Let me help you, uncle," he said. Together, they carried the bag to the man's small house. The man smiled, tears welling up in his eyes. "God bless you, son," he said. "You didn't have to, but you did." Ravi smiled, feeling the same warmth he had felt when the sister and brother had reunited. It wasn't just about the grand miracles. It was about moments like these, small acts that reminded people they weren't alone, that someone cared. Back at his home that night, Ravi opened the notebook again. He flipped through the pages and noticed something new. The sister had started writing. She had filled several pages with stories about her brother, their childhood, and the emotions of the reunion. Each page was filled with honesty, with love, with the gratitude she felt. Ravi realized that kindness had inspired creativity, reflection, and healing. A week later, Ravi received another call from the sister. "Ravi," she said excitedly, "we're planning to visit the village where our parents lived. We want to go together, the three of us, to see the temple and the banyan tree again. Will you come with us?" Ravi hesitated, but he could hear the excitement in her voice. "Of course," he replied. "I'll be there." The day of the visit, the weather was perfect. Clear skies, gentle breeze, and sunlight streaming through the trees. Ravi drove the taxi, feeling a mixture of nostalgia and happiness as they traveled toward the old village. The sister and brother sat together in the back seat, talking and laughing quietly, occasionally holding hands. Ravi smiled, feeling like a quiet guardian of this special journey. When they reached the village, the temple looked just as it had before, though older and more worn by time. The banyan tree stretched its roots wide, casting long shadows on the ground. The sister and brother stepped out, holding each other's hands, and walked toward the temple together. Ravi followed, giving them space, watching their expressions. They spent hours there, revisiting old memories, talking to villagers, and remembering the past. They laughed, cried, and shared stories of the years they had missed. It was more than a reunion. It was a rediscovery of life, a second chance at love and family. At one point, the sister turned to Ravi, her eyes filled with tears again. "We couldn't have done this without you," she said softly. "You didn't just drive me home or return a photograph. You gave us a path back to each other. You gave us hope when we thought it was gone." Ravi shook his head, trying to remain humble. "I just did what felt right," he said quietly. "The rest, that was yours to find." As the sun began to set, casting golden light on the temple and the banyan tree, the three of them sat on the steps, reflecting on the journey that had brought them back together. The sister rested her head on her brother's shoulder, while Ravi sat nearby, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had witnessed something extraordinary, a miracle born from compassion, patience, and a small act of kindness. Before leaving, the brother took Ravi aside. "I want you to know," he said, "that we'll never forget what you did. You didn't just change our lives. You reminded us that hope exists, even after decades of waiting. We will carry this with us forever." Ravi smiled, feeling warmth spread through him once again. "I'm glad," he said softly. "That's enough for me." As they drove back to the city, Ravi thought about how life worked in mysterious ways. A simple gesture, a small decision to care, could create ripples that touched countless lives. He realized that miracles weren't always grand or impossible. Sometimes they were quiet, subtle, and found in human hearts. That night, as Ravi parked his taxi and prepared for rest, he placed the photograph and the notebook on the dashboard. He looked at them, smiling to himself. The story of the sister and brother, of lost time and regained love, had changed him too. It reminded him that life's true miracles weren't measured in money or fame, but in the connections we make, the compassion we show, and the hope we inspire. He knew the journey wasn't over. There would be more passengers, more stories, more moments where a small choice could make a big difference. But for now, he let himself rest, carrying the quiet joy of witnessing a miracle, one that began with a simple act of kindness in a rainy taxi, one that would be remembered for a lifetime. The days following the village visit were full of quiet joy for the sister and brother. After 20 years apart, every moment together felt new, precious, and fragile, as if they had to make up for the years lost. They spent mornings walking in the park, afternoons talking about memories they had missed sharing, and evenings cooking together in the small apartment, laughing at old habits and quirks they both remembered. Yet no matter how happy they were, there was always a sense of gratitude toward the man who had brought them back together. Ravi continued his routine, driving his taxi through the busy streets of the city. But now every ride felt different. Each passenger reminded him that everyone was carrying stories, hopes, fears, and regrets. The reunion he had witnessed had changed something inside him, a quiet belief that even the smallest gestures could have life-changing impacts. He started paying closer attention, noticing when someone looked lost or tired, listening to strangers when they needed to talk, offering small comforts whenever he could. One afternoon, while waiting near a busy street corner, Ravi noticed an elderly woman struggling with her shopping bags. The plastic bags were tearing, and she looked anxious as cars honked around her. Without hesitation, Ravi parked his taxi and ran over. "Let me help you, Auntie," he said softly, taking the bags from her hands. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Beta," she said gently. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Ravi smiled. "It's no trouble at all," he replied. Together they walked to her small house. She invited him inside, insisting on giving him a cup of tea. He refused politely, explaining that he had work to do, but promised her that he was happy to help. As he left, he realized something he hadn't thought about before. Kindness wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about noticing someone's need and doing something, however small, to make their burden lighter. The memory of the sister and brother's reunion flashed in his mind, and he smiled quietly to himself. That single act had sparked a chain of events that changed lives, a reminder that one small gesture could create a ripple of hope. Later that evening, Ravi received a call from the sister. Her voice was filled with excitement and emotion. "Ravi, you have to come over," she said. "We have something to show you." Curious, Ravi drove to their apartment. When he arrived, he found them both waiting with something wrapped carefully in a box. The brother smiled at him, eyes full of gratitude. "We wanted to do this for you," he said. "You didn't just help us reunite. You reminded us what hope feels like, and we wanted to show you how much it means to us." Ravi took the box gently. Inside, he found a small wooden plaque, hand-carved, with the words engraved, "Kindness creates miracles." Beneath the words, a picture of the sister and brother was etched into the wood, the moment of their first embrace at the temple. Frozen forever, Ravi felt a lump form in his throat. I don't know what to say," he whispered. The sister smiled softly. "You don't need to say anything," she replied. "Just keep being the person you are. That's all the thanks we need," the brother nodded. This is our way of showing you that your actions mattered. They didn't just change our lives. They inspired us to believe in humanity again, and will carry this forever. Ravi placed the plaque on his dashboard in the taxi, deciding it would stay there as a constant reminder of what a small act could achieve. Every time he drove, it would remind him of hope, reunion, and the quiet miracles that happen when someone chooses to care. Weeks passed, and life gradually returned to its normal rhythm. The sister and brother became inseparable, sharing every detail of their days, helping each other and making plans for the future they had longed for, but never believed would come. Ravi continued driving, but now his taxi was more than a vehicle. It was a place where stories intersected, where lives sometimes changed, where ordinary moments could lead to extraordinary outcomes. One rainy evening, similar to the one when he first met the sister, Ravi parked near a bus stop and noticed a young man sitting alone, shivering from the cold. His clothes were soaked and his eyes were distant, filled with worry. Without hesitation, Ravi rolled down his window. "Do you need a ride, Beta?" he asked gently. The young man nodded, climbing into the taxi. I'm trying to find my mother," he said softly. "I've been searching for her for months." "I have no idea where she is." Ravi's heart ached. He remembered the sister's story, the photograph, the years of longing, and the way hope had brought them back together. He smiled softly. "Don't worry," he said. "We'll find her together. Tell me everything you know." As the young man began to speak, Ravi listened patiently, guiding him, encouraging him, offering words of comfort. He knew from experience that sometimes hope was all people needed to keep going, and a single act of care could open doors that seemed impossible. After a long drive, they reached an address the young man remembered. Ravi parked and waited. When they knocked, an elderly woman opened the door, her face filled with disbelief and emotion.
"Is it really you?"
she whispered. The young man stepped forward, tears streaming down his face, and the mother and son embraced, holding each other tightly after months of separation. Ravi stood a few steps away, watching quietly. Another reunion, another miracle. He felt the same warmth in his heart that he had when he first saw the sister and brother embrace. It was a reminder that kindness didn't just touch one life. It could create a chain of hope, love, and healing. Days turned into weeks, and Ravi continued his work with a renewed sense of purpose. Each ride became an opportunity to notice, to care, to act. People came and went, but he remembered their stories, the faces, the emotions. He knew that even the smallest gestures could make a difference in ways unseen. One afternoon, the sister called again. "Ravi," she said, "we're planning to do something special for the village where we grew up. We want to give back, to honor the people who helped us. Will you join us?" Ravi agreed immediately. When they arrived in the village, they carried gifts for the temple, for the children, and for the elderly who had watched over the sister and brother during their years apart. The villagers were touched, and the two siblings shared their story openly, telling everyone how a simple act of kindness had brought them back together. Ravi stood quietly, watching. He didn't need recognition. Seeing the joy, the gratitude, and the hope they were spreading was enough. He realized that life was a chain of small decisions, small gestures, and small acts of care. Each one could create ripples far beyond what anyone could see. That evening, as the sun set over the village, the sister and brother sat beneath the old banyan tree. "We owe so much to one person," the brother said softly. "He didn't just bring us together. He reminded us that hope exists even when it feels lost." The sister nodded. "He showed us that kindness is powerful, and miracles can happen when someone chooses to care. We'll never forget him, and we'll never forget what he gave us." Ravi, sitting quietly nearby, felt a deep sense of peace. He realized that the story wasn't just theirs, it was his too. He had witnessed a miracle guided by compassion, and in doing so had been changed himself. As night fell, the stars appeared in the sky, sparkling like tiny reminders of hope. The sister and brother walked hand in hand back to their home, smiling, laughing, and planning for the future they had always dreamed of. Ravi returned to his taxi, driving through the quiet streets, thinking about all the people he had met and all the stories he had heard. He knew that his journey wasn't over. There would be more passengers, more stories, more opportunities to make a difference. But now he carried a quiet confidence in his heart, that even one small act of kindness could create miracles. heal old wounds, and remind people that hope, love, and connection still exist in the world. And as he parked his taxi that night, placing the photograph and the wooden plaque on the dashboard, he smiled to himself. The sister and brother story had come full circle, but the impact of that reunion would ripple outward forever. Ravi had learned in the simplest and most human way that life's true miracles weren't measured by wealth or power, but by compassion, empathy, and the courage to act when someone needs you most. He turned off the engine, looked at the city lights reflecting on the wet streets, and whispered quietly, "Kindness matters, and miracles, they really do happen." The world was vast, chaotic, and unpredictable, but in that small taxi, through one simple choice to care, Ravi had witnessed a miracle that would never be forgotten. And somewhere, in a city filled with millions of stories, another act of kindness was waiting to create the next miracle.